A warm good afternoon from the Department of English, Mercy College, Palakkad. We are here to begin the afternoon session of our national webinar, Changing Times, Changing Media. In the morning, I hope all of you were there with us. All of you who are here now were with us. And we had two sessions on journalism with journalists. And now we have a different person altogether. She is an entrepreneur based in New Delhi. Her name is Ms. Namrata Rana. She has been kind enough to join us for this webinar to talk to all of you. So I invite our head of the department, Dr. Sheena John, to introduce her to all of you. Have a nice session.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the third session of the national webinar, Changing Times, Changing Media. We're really happy about the enthusiastic response for the webinar invitation. We have come to the third session of the webinar. After the two morning sessions on journalism, we are now moving on to a keynote session handled by Ms. Namrata Rana, entrepreneur and author. Ms. Rana is the author of Balance, Responsible Business for the Digital Age. Based in New Delhi, Ms. Rana is Director, Strategy and Brand at Futurescape. An enthusiastic academician, Ms. Rana is visiting faculty at IIM Udaipur and Indian Ambassador at University of Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership. Ms. Rana is going to speak on the recent trends in creating responsible brand. The topic of the keynote address is Creating a Better World, Marketing in the Changing Times. It's my pleasure to welcome Ms. Namrata Rana to this national webinar. On behalf of the college and the Department of English, I accord a warm welcome to you, ma'am. I also extend a warm welcome to all the participants of the webinar. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so very much. I'm really delighted to be here. And thank you, Mercy College, Palakkad, Department of English, for inviting me. And thank you, students, for actually being here today. And I really hope you enjoy the discussion. I will be saying a little bit, but what I would be really keen is to hear from you and what your thoughts are on the topic of today, which is creating a better world, marketing in challenging times. So let's talk about the things the way they are today. Number one, growth in nature is always balanced, multifaceted. While ecosystems grow, others decline. At the same time, everything is reused and transformed into new species and environments. This biological concept of development is talked about is the definition of growth in biological systems. This is very different from our system of growth in the context of economics. And I'm sure you must be talking about it, thinking about it at some level, because large parts of the entire environment around us, the economic environment around us, has been propagated under the context of capitalism, which is based on what Milton Friedman said. He said that the business of business is business. That is, profit maximization is really at the core of everything we do. But at one level, if you really think about it, this is counter to everything we are taught in school, which is do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. The belief is that if everyone looks after themselves, then some invisible hand will ensure that everyone will be better off. This actually hasn't really happened. We are in the midst of climate change with skyrocketing levels of carbon in the air. We are also in the midst of the largest species extinction with historic levels of loss in flora and fauna. And the pandemic has only shown us that the inequalities in our system are enormous. Growth has not been equal. The richest 2,000 people own more than 4.6 billion others. Companies are flush with funds, but the real income of people have declined. The consequences of imbalance are mostly seen in the long run, and if allowed to go unchecked, disruption caused by business at one level has caused imbalances in society. So while capitalism has flourished, the environment has been left behind. So there has also been a huge number of products and services that have grown exponentially in the last 40 to 50 years. And marketing constantly keeps talking about more and more and more consumption, right? But more and more and more consumption also means a huge amount of waste, provided the products that we are consuming are not used properly. For instance, the clothes that we wear and discard subsequently could be lying around in landfills. The products that we use, the computers, the refrigerators, the lights, what is the way of actually discard? I mean, we may end up discarding them, but how is it that they can actually get absorbed back into the environment? They can't really, right? So they lie around. There's that huge amount of waste and landfills that we see all around us. And the pandemic has actually shown a light on a lot of our irresponsible ways of consuming products and services at one level. It has also shown us that there is a possibility of change, because when all the lockdowns happened, all across the world, the skies cleared up. And there is a whole generation, I mean, your generation of children who've possibly never seen clear skies in many parts of the world. So it was a contrast to the earlier times, which was just a few months back, right? So we are in a transitionary phase at this point in time. So if you look at television and if you look at your mobile phones, you will see many brands talking about social causes, talking about doing good. Why is that happening? That's happening because at some level there is a consciousness that yes, the current path of endless growth needs to be actually executed in a very different way, in an environmentally conscious, in a socially conscious manner. So what are brands really looking at? They're looking at actually talking about empathy. They're saying that you need to be empathetic to craft messages which are reassuring and relatable to consumers in these unprecedented times. Next, they're talking about trust. Now more than ever, consumers need to see brands who actually do things and not just say things. So there is a huge difference between, which is not to say that responsible brands did not exist earlier, but now more than ever, brands are being asked to stand up to the promise. And it's actually becoming a very big thing. The third thing that people are talking about is entertainment. The avenues and the opportunities of entertainment are limited. We are all stuck at home. We are practicing social distancing. We can't really go out as much as we do. So these three things, empathy, trust, and fun, and fun equals entertainment, are the things that people are focusing on. So the topic of my discussion today is really about how can brands build empathy, how can they build trust, and how can they become some closer to customers, where customers actually see them as problem solvers, as parts of their journey, and not necessarily people who are untrustworthy, or they are just giving them a short-term deal and they will then go away or disappear and so on. So at this point in time, since we are still in the middle of the pandemic, there is a new normal, which is actually asking the industry to pause and think and evolve different kinds of strategic priorities. So the discussion around the new emerging shift have repeatedly highlighted the need for balance. So when we talk of development, when we talk about growth, when we talk about consumerism, we can't really talk about all these aspects in a very narrow economic sense. They need to be talked about in a more multidimensional manner. So what does building responsible brands really mean? Building responsible brands at one level could talk about, so what's the blueprint for change, right? So is there are many priorities across countries, across regions, across people, across consumers, right? But at one level, you have the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals that exist, and they talk about everything from poverty to health to well-being, road safety, and actually, looking at climate change in a very serious manner. So they provide a pathway to a sustainable and more prosperous world. So does it mean that to build a responsible brand, we should all start looking at the SDGs. Yes, at a broad level, but what does a brand really need to do to actually start talking the right things? So let's just look at the problem first. So much of the problem of, at least to some level, the problem of sustainability can be attributed to increased consumerism. For instance, there were about 3.2 billion people in the middle class at the end of 2016. And this is expected to grow to some extent. Pandemic has caused a little bit of a estimation issue, but even so, there will be some kind of organic growth till 2030. Now, if the rapid expansion of the middle class were to continue at a global level at the same pace, right? Almost 90% of the next billion entrants into the global middle class will be from Asia. There'll be 380 million Indians, 350 million Chinese, and 210 million other Asians. And all this will further increase disposable incomes, expectations, and a desire to consume even more. So the pressure on land, energy, water, higher carbon emissions, and increased waste is expected to be enormous. But so people are also saying that while consumerism is the cause of unsustainability, right? Could it be a solution? All consumption impacts the environment and the economy, and therefore small acts of daily consumption over a long period of time can make a change. And if this daily consumption is positive, right, it improves things, then over time we can actually bring about massive change. For instance, there are small examples, so, right? The removal of plastic bags, the removal of plastic packaging, using a bicycle or walking more than what we than just driving, right? Going for using less detergent in our laundry wash, right? Small things that you can do. Reduction of food waste. So customers, just all of us together can impact our own families, our friends, our colleagues. So the perception is that since advertising is so persuasive and pervasive, it's everywhere, right? It's on your mobile phones, it's on the computer, it's on television, it's in newspapers. So if consumers all across the world or in various parts can actually focus on the solutions that they can create for themselves, it will create a big change. So many organizations are actually focusing on these kinds of issues, and you must have noticed the recent advertising from many brands that is focusing on these things. And consumers, therefore, are coming to expect that the products that they use meet social requirements, or at the very least, that they don't harm people and the environment. And there are big iconic brands that are focused on this. Say, for instance, there's Unilever, who says that brands who do good have seen sales grow in double digits in the past few years. And there are many other organizations that have also followed around the same thing. And brand research teams are finding that connecting to causes of a strategic nature builds brand trust. It showcases a company's desire to stand for something more than a television commercial, right? So it goes beyond the functional value of the product, and it also builds trust. So the communication has a long tail, right? While building consumer connections does explain the trends towards cause marketing, it doesn't really explain why business-to-business brands are doing cause-based campaigns. It's actually a similar thing, because if you're not necessarily speaking to individuals, you're speaking to other companies. The other companies start thinking that you're a responsible organization because you believe in certain causes, you believe in doing the right thing, and therefore are trustworthy. The next thing is that how do you build authenticity, right? So at one level, you're talking about building trust. You're saying that you will associate yourself to a particular cause. Then the next step happens, which is how do you build authenticity? The growth in consumer access to information has resulted in products available in marketing being viewed as very differently from what it used to be. Consumers are not just interested in better quality, They want to know how products are made, right? So if a brand says that this particular material is biodegradable, this t-shirt is made of cotton, it is made of organic cotton, it is made of the it is BCI certified. BCI is the Better Cotton Initiative that uses less water. It is supposed to be more environmentally friendly. Customers want to know, is this authentic? Is it genuine? Is the claim that the organization making genuine? So while at one level we can talk about intent, authenticity is about action and believability, right? So even in food, so customers are saying, fine, you said that this particular food product has these ingredients and has this nutritional value. Can I believe you? How do I believe what you say you are or what you say you will do, right? So certifications are gaining a lot of prominence. So you will start noticing that even now it's happening in the near future as well. Many organizations are going to be changing their labeling. Toys, gadgets, clothes, food, energy, right? Certifications are going to come up like Energy Star, Water Sense, Cradle to Cradle, Green Seal, Certified Organic, Fair Trade, Rainforest Alliance, Forest Stewardship Council, and many more things like that. These are useful in demonstrating credibility when leading brands are selling to consumers and are interested in developing a network of suppliers as well. So building a brand is more than advertising. While a brand may associate itself with a cause, customers may not be ready to trust it. So despite the ability of marketers to reach the right profile of customers and the persuasiveness of the argument, customer choice is not always driven by causes they support or what is good for the environment. Why is that? That's because there is no believability in what the customer is saying. I think somebody's audio is on, so would you like to switch that off?
Participants, kindly mute yourself. Otherwise, it is difficult for us to understand what the speaker is talking. Aparna KG, your audio is on. Your microphone is on. Please switch it off. Aparna KG? Okay. Ma'am, you can continue. Sorry for the
Okay.
interruption.
No worries. So I was just saying that building a brand is more than advertising, right? And so if you associate with causes, but customers may still not buy into your product because there may be no believability. So to build believability, to build authenticity, you need to do far more than what you're currently doing. So price is important, quality is important, the 4 P's of marketing, packaging, placement, and a host of other things are relevant, right? But there's a gap between intent and actual action of customers. It's called the action gap. For example, most customers are aware of the problem caused by plastic bags, right? Plastic bags never really degrade. They clog the drains, they cause flooding, they get eaten by animals who may eventually choke on them. So it's a very big issue. Yet, use of plastic bags continues across the world. By stopping the use of plastic bags, customers could easily impact the environment in a significant way. Yet they don't, possibly because customers can't really trade off their ethical choice against the other attributes of plastics, which is accessibility, the fact that it's cheaper, it's lightweight, right? So brand communication that aligns itself to a cause is therefore not the only answer. Business models themselves also need to become sustainable. And you need to look at a dual framework approach where brands are aligned to causes, but internal production and practices also need to be aligned. And unless that is done, it may not necessarily be successful. I mean, take the case of the healthcare sector, right? We've all seen that in the pandemic, the vast requirement of health in almost every aspect, which is hospitals, medical devices, clinical trials, outsourcing, health insurance, medical equipment, everywhere that you see, there is a vast gap between what we have and what exists, right? And but in the context of a healthcare company, the context for responsibility is incredibly complex, right? And why is that? Because of the nature of the industry. While the industry sells a solution to illness, the thinking and actions of a healthcare player, whether in pharma or managed healthcare, needs to be oriented towards the betterment of human health and well-being, right? Since the industry is intrinsically committed to doing public good, society has many expectations of a healthcare firm, other than managing the environment impact like any other business. So what do consumers expect of the healthcare industry? They expect effective, high-quality medicines, attention, and care at hospitals. Absence of spurious drugs, ethical dealings, and honesty, but is that all? As important as all the other aspects, consumers also expect affordable healthcare products and services. So, unlike other businesses where price is set by the ability to pay for the healthcare industry, price at sometimes is subservient to public good. So what are we really trying to say? We are saying that uh, building brand trust is important, building authenticity is important, and even when an industry that is associated with doing public good exists, it may not necessarily be sufficient. You need to actually walk the talk that what your brand is saying, what you're actually executing in almost every aspect, right? So at one level, you also have industries like the oil and gas industry, which sits at the heart of sustainability debate as it provides more than half of the world's energy sources. The industry is highly energy intensive, and a focus on increasing internal efficiencies is very important, right? So what is, the industry is also transforming themselves in terms of the product mix. So many industries are actually realizing that the core product fundamentally needs to change if they are to actually, no one can get left behind in the sustainability discussion, even the oil and gas industry, right? So many of them have started renewable energy projects, and they are expected to change the product mix in the next 5 years. So what is a brand? A brand is a sum total of all these aspects that you need to look at. What is your product? What is your price? How will you place it? How will you package it? And how will you be responsible, right? So there is 4 P's and a R that has been added to the responsibility, to the brand issues. So, I'd like to sort of conclude by saying 2 important things. Products are made in factories, but brands are made in hearts, right? A lot of decisions are made because we love something. Everything is not by me because of, right? You may like me for things that I do, hence brand affinity has a higher life as it is not just functional. Therefore, brands take things that are relevant to society and build it into their communication benefit. For example, cleanliness, women's empowerment, and so on. However, communication only changes attitudes, and genuine change needs to be part of the brand ambition, as the brand will only prosper if society prospers. So therefore, defining a common agenda for the brand and its stakeholders helps in narrowing down the areas of focus and helps in starting the process and staying the course. This is where cause marketing can step in to communicate the cause, build support, and be part of the process that builds a better society. Strategy, nor is it a product strategy. It's really about how business over the long term. At one level, companies do realize that environment sustainability closing the loop around supply chains. So product returns, repair, manufacturing, recycling, remarketing, etc., etc. And those kind of products and services are going to come in, going to get associated with the brand values. And the next bit is that how do your employees behave? So, there's a functional aspect of a shampoo or a product or a brand, but there are many services brands as well. You are talking about business responsibility, then your employee behavior of your entire extended ecosystem, which is at retail, even if you're a B2B brand, how your people behave, how do they communicate. So all that has an extremely important aspect. So safety, behavior, data protection, privacy are some of the obvious blind spots of companies which they ignore. But now employees will need to be the flag bearers of these higher standards. In the event of an incident, people will have to stand up for the causes they talked about supporting. So you can't really say that I'm a responsible brand because I'm water positive, and then you sell a product that actually consumes extraordinary amount of water, right? So everything matters, everything connects, and creating responsible brands is really what the challenge of the 21st century is going to be. One of the big challenges. That's all I have to say. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have. Students, would you like to sort of
Thank you, ma'am,
let
for
me know
that
what your
session.
thoughts are?
Thank
Yeah.
you, ma'am, for that session. Um, Participants, I request you to put your questions in the chat box so that Avishka can read them out. You can ask about branding, the trust factor, anything that ma'am talked about now. By the time the students are ready with their questions, ma'am, I would like to ask you a question. I have a
Sure.
clarification. What is that element that has gone in creating a lot of trust in the corporate sector today? Isn't it ironic that Indians who would not trust strangers at all would not hesitate now to hire an Uber in a metropolitan city, sent by a stranger and driven by a stranger? Similarly, there is a blah blah carpool. Usually,
Hmm.
when somebody asks you for a lift, you don't give. You don't let in strangers. You don't get into a stranger's car. But for corporates like blah blah, we do trust them. So, what is that factor that has gone into uh, uh, that kind of trust?
See, that kind of trust has been enabled by technology that actually creates transparency, right? So the problem that many of these car services, pick and drop services companies have been able to solve with the help of technology is that ultimately you know who the mobile number belongs to, right? So the phone owner has done a KYC, and then they're calling up a service provider like Uber or blah blah car, so they know where the call is coming from, and we also know that the driver has been authenticated uh, by them. So it is two levels of trust, and the fact that the service has been created to, which says that yes, the service will meet your standards, and then there is a rating system. So if you look very closely at the service design of these products, it is all about building trust at almost every level, right? It's not a simple service which says that you're picking and dropping. If you look at all aspects of the way that it has been designed, it's all about building authenticity. So the intent was there to build trust, and then they actually went about and created it at multiple levels.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. We have another question. Excuse me, ma'am. 1 minute. We have a question by a student. She'll be asking now.
Should I read the questions in the chat box?
No, she'll read it out for you.
Okay.
Meanwhile, let me put another question. How far has the idea of sustainability, which involves a moral dimension as well, find a place in the Indian market? How far has the idea of sustainability found a place in the Indian market?
See, the number, it depends on the product category. Say, for instance, if you look at travel, is not very high at the present moment, but people are thinking about it. They're evaluating them. Products are being made. The policy work from the government side is also happening. So at one level, there is a discussion around all this. The second thing is that when you look at food, there's a lot of discussion in terms of what is there in my food. Do I know how authentic it is? Does it have the nutritional value that I really need? And the pandemic has only accelerated these discussions around food quality, right? So depending upon product category, there are many big issues. It hasn't really come in the context of fashion in India in a very big way, but world over, there are fundamental changes that people are talking about, and the big brands are talking about, and the targets that they're setting to actually go to net zero. And India is a fabric and an apparel supplier to many large brands all across the world. So because they've set those targets, it is going to impact the Indian supply chain and manufacturing as well, and also the customer communication, right? So the customer communication has so many aspects. At one level, it is that, will the product itself fulfill the promise? And second, if the brand can stand behind it. So while there is in some categories, there is a consumer pull. In some categories, there is a push from the side of the brands themselves to actually say that, we are standing for a more ethical and a more sustainable kind of a lifestyle.
Ma'am, hello, ma'am.
Yes, hi.
Ma'am, I'm Abhishka.
Hi.
Yeah. Do you think Indian market has started promoting environmentally and socially conscious production and marketing?
I think I just answered that. It depends on product category, and the scale of change in the next 5 years is expected to be very high on the product branding and the communication side as well.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, we have another question from Anne Teresa Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, branding and advertisement are gaining more importance in the market. So when a new brand pop up, how does it reach the market like nowadays without advertisements?
See, the digital media has a very important role to play. So when you talk about advertising, it is just one aspect of reaching your customer. The other aspect is placing the product when the customer has a particular need. So when you see digital advertising or digital communication and the pop-ups that you see around Facebook, around Google, when you're searching for a particular product or a service, or just searching on something, right? So that's a way of the companies trying to reach you when you are actually searching for something like that, right? So one way is creating the right product. Second is the right distribution. Three, being visible when the customer actually feels the need of something. And then, of course, is television advertising, print advertising, and so on. So there are many avenues of reaching customers. And now you actually know who your customers are, because a lot of the browsing and interactions, etc., are all done on our mobile phones. So that is a very important way of actually reaching customers, and word of mouth also carries a lot. And interestingly enough, people are also using games and in-game promotions to actually reach customers. So if you notice, some time back, now I'm forgetting the name of the singer, there was a music album that was launched on Fortnite, right? And it had millions of viewers. So there are many ways of reaching customers, and it's not just about passive advertising.
Thank you, ma'am. Another question from Amrita Balakrishnan. In spite of being aware of the ill effects of many unsustainable products available in the market, consumers are concerned mostly on the short-term benefits. How can consumers be persuaded to buy eco-friendly products when there are other cheap alternatives available?
If you've noticed that there are in certain categories, howsoever cheap a product is, sometimes consumers don't buy it because they eventually know that it will harm them, right? Things that are good for you will have a long-term impact, and they will find the kind of consumers who will actually believe in them, right? And this is specifically true of healthcare products. This is specifically true of anything that we eat. This is specifically true now more so than ever, because health, wellness, and quality, hygiene, these are extremely important parameters that have cropped up in the minds of everybody. So I'm not saying that price doesn't matter. Price does matter, and it matters at various levels in different socioeconomic lifestyles and classes, but people can make a change, right? And when you start believing in something and believing in an ecosystem that you believe in, your friends and family also start getting involved. So that's the power of a brand, that to be able to convince customers to actually change and to adopt healthier lifestyles. And the pandemic has actually made that change to a very large extent, where people are saying that I really want to clean up the environment, I want to be conscious, I want to do good, and I don't want to put things inside my body that could harm me, right?
Thank you, ma'am. Next question is from Sheba. The startup programs that are trending now are looking forward to build in a new branding paradigm. But how to cope up with the established brands? Even if we come up with organic items, we are driven backward.
Shiba, which product are you talking about? Is there a specific product you have in mind on this?
Shiba, are you there? Shiba, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'm here, ma'am. Ma'am, my question exactly is because I'm having a startup program exactly at my hometown, and we are having like brands where we are working on with flour and items which are very much useful for a kitchen. But ultimately, what happens is that though we are bringing out as an homemade thing, finally it comes out as something which is not branded properly, or something which is not having that brand sign which comes out with other brands. So we are in a position that we have to look up backward. Like we have flour mill where we produce things which are clearly organic, which we do the drying and then we do the grinding. Everything is homely done. But finally, when it gets into the market, we are rejected because the brands are always there. So how to cope up with that branding and that marketing that is happening in the whole market, cultural market, I would say.
I think you need to talk to your customers and figure out what is it that is impacting them. Because one, of course, creating a brand is not that easy. Competing with existing
Absolutely.
market players is not that easy. They may also, in a retail environment, placement also makes a lot of difference, right? The kind of shelf space that is given to other competing brands versus you. So there are many, many issues within that. But perhaps what you could do is explore digital marketing and try to reach out to customers who actually believe in these kind of things. So say, for instance, in certain parts where there are customers who are actually buying ragi, bajra, jowar, flour, and the sales of these products has increased in the past few months because people believe that it is good for them, and having just plain wheat flour is not so good. But they perhaps should be adding these kind of things. So maybe you need to find where your customers are. They may not be visiting the places that you are placing your product.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Could be, right? I'm only speaking from
Yes.
the outside. We could have a
Yes,
more
yes,
deep
ma'am.
conversation later.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Next question from Sneha. Ma'am, what is your advice to students on entrepreneurship?
My advice to students on entrepreneurship is that find what you love and then follow that passion, and find different. You don't even need to have one specific thing that you want to do because you're young. You can experiment. So my advice is experiment as much as possible, and try to follow the things that you like to do in a scientific way. That is the secret to entrepreneurship. So just following your passion and not doing it in a scientific or an authentic way may not be such a good idea. But then if you have to follow it in a rigorous manner.
Thank you, ma'am. Next one, it's from Anu Lawrence. How far do you think India has started addressing the issue of wastage, the inevitable result of consumerism?
We've not started addressing it, and we must address it. And in fact, if you young students want to look at this as a career opportunity, it is one of the biggest career opportunities. There are very few people in the space. There's a potential for change. There is public policy. There is consumer push, but there's very little on-ground action, right? So biomining, looking at waste as one company's waste as another company's resource. There are many, many different opportunities that are opening up in this area.
Thank you, ma'am. Next one. Indian consumers are getting to be more brand conscious, but even so, they remain a largely vulnerable group, mostly influenced by advertisements and the claims made by the manufacturers in the advertisement. What is your take on this?
See, digital technology has created many avenues for questioning what a brand is actually communicating, right? And I think that there is a time, and in the recent past, there has also been a lot of opportunity for people to distrust what brands are saying. So there is a push and there is a pull. That at one level, what brands are communicating something. Customers have different expectations, and they're also trying to figure out whether the brand is actually doing what they actually say or not. So there is, if you want to talk about entrepreneurship, there is another big opportunity here where you can say that how do you find avenues for building brand trust. There's new technology that is being explored. People are saying that, can we look at IoT-based solutions so that you can scan a product and figure out which farm it came from? in terms of food, huh? So if I'm buying tomatoes, I should be able to figure out that this is the farmer that sold me organic tomatoes. Can I do that, right? So there is technology that is being explored that is talking about building trust and building traceability. So it's still some time away, but it's again a very big opportunity.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
So are we done with the questions? I think we've covered almost everything, right?
I think we have completed the chat box questions, and I hope there are no more questions. Is there anybody who would like to ask some questions? You are free to ask now. Meanwhile, another important announcement: please don't forget to fill up the feedback forms. Only then you will be issued your e-certificates. Students, before leaving, please fill up the feedback forms. Oh, the Google format, the Google Doc has been given both in the comment box as well as in the YouTube. Please fill up before you leave. Thank you so much, ma'am, for that interesting session. So I think it's time to wind up our webinar.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I hope all of you enjoyed. And if you want to reach out to me individually, please, my Twitter ID is at Namrata Rana. Please feel free to write to me anytime. Thank you very much.
Ma'am, could you please put that in the chat box?
I will.
Your Twitter ID.
Done.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone.
So I think it's time for the vote of thanks session. So, respected chief guest of the afternoon session, Ms. Namrata Rana, dear participants, faculty from other colleges, my colleagues, students. So it was a day well spent. That is what we would like to tell you today. In the wake of the COVID pandemic and the depression that followed, we are happy that ultimately we were able to make something positive out of it through this webinar. In the morning sessions, we had two resource persons, two eminent journalists from the media field. They talked about fake news, they talked about ethics, media ethics, about women's space in journalism, about the decision making and issues concerning women and decision making in media, and things like that. In the afternoon session, we had a very eminent person from the marketing field. This resource person, I never thought that we would get such a person from, and it was a surprise. I got her through my friend, and she readily agreed. The moment I requested her to come for this webinar, she readily agreed. And we have been learning advertising and marketing a bit as part of our syllabus, but only when a person who has been working in the field comes and talks to you, do you get to understand more about the things that go behind the whole thing that we see branding every day, we see products, we live in a consumer world, but what all goes behind that, what we see on the TV screen, that is what Ma'am Namrata has been talking to us. She talked about trust, she talked about the strategy behind branding, she talked about the lack of wastage management in India that Indian market is facing now, and it was really informative and enlightening. I hope that all of you thoroughly enjoyed the session. So on behalf of the PG Department of English, Mercy College Palakkad, and the head of the department, I extend our warm gratitude to all of you who have participated in this webinar and made it a grand success. I thank the resource persons, Sri B. Srijan, Ms. Saraswati Nagarajan, and Ms. Namrata Rana for joining us and making the sessions lively. I thank the participants for asking very good questions so that all the resource persons have got opportunities to elaborate upon them. I thank the principal for giving us an opportunity to host this webinar. I thank our technical staff, Mr. Jason, my colleague and fellow coordinator Raki NP, and all the colleagues, all my colleagues in the English department, especially Dr. Sheena John, head of our department, for helping us do this program in an extremely good manner. Thank you so much. Please fill up your feedback form. Meet you again. Keep in touch. Keep in touch, ma'am. We'll be keeping in touch with you. You would be joining us in similar programs again. You will be part of the Mercy family. Thank you so much. So let us wind up the webinar, and let me sign off now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and stay safe and stay well, everyone. Take care. Have a nice day. Bye.
Bye.